I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest, Sugata, is a seasoned tech entrepreneur, operator, and CEO who's reshaping how companies scale through AI-driven partner operations. As the founder and CEO of the #1 AI PRM SaaS platform, Sugata leads with a builder's mindset, bringing people, platforms, and strategy together to drive profitable growth. He has launched and scaled multiple technology ventures globally. His passion lies in aligning customer success and employee success, what he calls the true engine of sustainable business. Beyond the boardroom, Sugata is a writer and a storyteller who draws on history, finance, and technology to make sense of the future. He believes leadership is about people, leads with humility and service, and yes, keeps it light with an occasional dad joke. Sugata, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Do Hard Things podcast with your hosts, Gabe and Lexi. We just heard Sugata's story, and I'm so excited you're here, man. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Now, just so you know, everyone, I was actually on Sugata's podcast a little bit ago, and that's how we met. And so I'm excited that I'm now on the other side here, learning about you and learning about your business. But, Sugata, you've built and scaled multiple tech ventures, across industries, across geographies. Where did that entrepreneur journey begin? Let's talk about your origin story. Really, what drew you into this intersection of partnerships and technology?
So a couple of years into sort of working, I figured out I wasn't a great engineer. I was, great with people, going out, meeting customers, and, sort of putting stuff together. I was an okay engineer. So I thought, this engineering thing is not going to last very long. So I started to look for assignments. I moved into sales engineering, and I loved working with customers. And so my first assignments, I worked for a company called Honeywell. It was Allied Signal then. It bought Honeywell, became Honeywell. And it was an amazing place because I was part of the new ventures team. And we were working with the R&D part of Honeywell, which was a pretty large team with multiple projects. And we were trying to commercialize, license, or build ventures. So that was my first foray. And I just loved it. And I always stayed in new ventures. My early stages of ventures are all in large companies, blue chip companies. So they're very different. Zinfi is my sort of first, gig, but we have gone through multiple iterations of it over the years. But that's how I kind of got into it, and I just loved it.
I love that. And before you were a CEO and a leader, what were some of those early on lessons that really shaped how you build today?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing, maybe a few things. One is, as an engineer, you kind of learn to balance the left side to the right side with an equal sign. So you kind of try to focus on what that equal is. And what I realized early in my career is that equal sign is essentially people. Because when you're trying to solve problem on the left-hand side, try to get to answer on the right-hand side, the most important thing is to figure out talent. And in the end, you're basically a coordinator, cheerleader, inspirer, putting together a plan. But unless people are willing to follow you, take risks, do things that they might impact their careers, you won't go anywhere. So I think the most important thing, I think I walked away, and I had some amazing bosses throughout the career, and I saw them. And I remember there was a gentleman, it was a pretty high up in Honeywell, and there was a mentor program, so I signed up, and I asked him how did he went through his career. It's so far so high, and he basically said, "It kind of happened." I'm like, how can it just happen? You must have done something. And then I kept on asking him, and it kept on coming out. The answer was, "Well, you figure out how to work with people." And I repeatedly heard that from others also. And as I started to feel that is sort of your way of, whatever modest success you're going to achieve in life, you have to focus on people. One side is customers, they're figuring out their problem, and another side is figuring out a group of people that they want to solve those problems and get the same kick that you would get. Once you figure that out, I think things become easier. It never gets completely solved or easy, but it gets easier.
Yeah, so you said the word easy, which I obviously have to look at the opposite, which is hard, which is our whole podcast, right? Do hard things. And I like to share this story sometimes on the show because, I grew up in a very blue collar family. Everyone had to physically lift heavy things, get dirty. And, some people had to literally got hurt on the job, right? And in business and technology and people and sales and marketing, there's no physical labor, but it's still very, very difficult. So is it really that hard? Like, is what you're talking about, right? Dealing with people, dealing with technology and building these businesses and these partnerships, is it that difficult? And why is it that difficult?
Yeah, so I by training I was a chemical engineer. So speaking of heavy things, the first couple of years I went into manufacturing plants and I saw people pick up in literally heavy things. The thing about picking up heavy things is that while it's dangerous in certain way, but there are checks and balances in place, when you operate within certain framework, you may turn out to be okay. Of course, things go wrong, people get hurt, happens all the time, but there's so many checks and balances in place that you sort of, if you live by those rules, you come out okay. Yes, you put in a lot of physical effort. Building a business, on the other hand, you really don't have checks and balances, and you just have certain kind of, you built amazing businesses, Gabe, as like you have to kind of figure out how long is your ski, how far you can see, are you going beyond your headlights, are you staying within, what's the implication, on the other side. So the easy part is kind of doing the physical hard work and actually showing up, finding people. But the real hard part is to getting visibility, which you never really have. And then things happen like COVID and others that are like, nowhere in your playbook, and you adjust, right? And you and I had this conversation on the podcast, how sort of the outbound completely changed over the last 5 years. Nobody anticipated that. And we don't know where AI will be, 5 years from now, based on where it is now. So the easy part, I think, is showing up and having stamina and having a team and working on things that can be physically exhausting. But the hard part is really getting control over that visibility.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the balance between AI and people too. So you're at the forefront of AI-powered partner relationship management. What gaps did you really see that inspired you to create the platform?
So the biggest challenge, Lexi, is to the hype. Get excited about the hype and lose the reality. It's an amazing capability. I think it's coming online, but it's also very complex. And so, the platform we provide to our customers, we work for Fortune 100 companies. We have 30 plus Fortune 100 accounts, hundreds of enterprise deployment we have done. and they have very, very complex processes. And for them to just automate without AI, just common business, like if you think about a tool like CRM, right? Uh, and that word relationship between a brand and their customer greatly varies from sizes of the company, vertical they have, how long they have been business, is it a new, is it an old, and how you map that process, how you do the outbound, how you engage, how you do a demo. Every one of those steps are different, right? So you can't take a 7-step CRM process and give it to everybody and say, hey, just go automate, buy this, buy that, and you're done, right? You need an organization like yourselves to really come in and work with them, design the flow, integrate the process, put people with the right skills. And AI is making it 10 times harder. That's why I think if you see this hype that's going on, people are settling that it's much more difficult. The rewards are much bigger also. So from our perspective, what we have been trying to do is to really bring in kind of a logical set of functions and features that customers can use now without worrying about data privacy, governance. There are other aspects of it. And so we see ourselves in a very positive way. I think AI, I personally don't believe it's going to take the jobs away. I really don't believe that. I think it's the opposite. I think there's so much debt in every company, technical debt, marketing debt, sales debt. I mean, if you think about programs that you want to run and the resources you have, there's a huge discrepancy today, right? And AI can enable us to do what we want to do faster, more of it. And if we do the right thing, the business should grow, right? So I think net is going to be a hugely positive impact. But right now, there's a lot of hype. So the way we're trying to approach this is take very, very logical set of functions, roll them out, whether it's content creation, whether it's lead scoring, whether it's follow up or analytics or assist bots, etc. That stays within means, doesn't hallucinate, doesn't lose trust. So I think that's the way we're trying to approach.
Do you think the dust is settling right now with the hype? Do you feel like it's still pretty hyped up?
Well, last night I read that OpenAI is now valued $500 billion, right?
Right.
And when I look at the investments that are going in this 50-mile rate, I'm right on the other side of the East Bay in Silicon Valley, and this is like the hype universe of everything. If you not go to a cafe or go to a party or anything, I mean, that's the topic, right? What I see is happening, I think, I would say hype, maybe if you break it down into 2 or 3 parts. One is pure excitement. It's a cool new thing. Can we play with it? What is it doing? Oh my God, it's amazing. That's one part, right? The other part is, oh, we can make a lot of money, right? I think those 2 parts are real. The part, I think, where the reality is hitting, oh man, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's not just going into ChatGPT, asking questions and spitting out stuff. To really use it in business, you have to have process engineering background. You need to have real good ideas of business outcome. You need to know where your technical debts are, whether it's in the sales side, where the broken pieces are, right? I mean, RevOps today, on an average RevOps stack, has 13 tools in it. And it doesn't work.
Right.
So it's not the tool. AI is not going to come and replace those 13 tools. It's possibly the 14th one that gets added a little bit here, a little bit there. So I think there's an enormous amount of work. So I think what's going to happen is there's a whole bunch of wrapper company that will start unfolding. And we already see that today, 11x and a bunch of other that we have seen. But on the other hand, I think the foundational companies, like when you look at OpenAI or Google, Anthropic, there's a bunch of, I think there's 50 of them. They're really solid, but they will diffuse gradually. So I think we're going to see a spectrum of it, but I don't think the bubble has burst. Based on what happens with the overall macro economy, at one point in time, the free money would dry up because we're still living up the COVID stimulus. So there's a lot of money chasing these bad deals that will start unfolding. But as capability is going to stay, it is going to find its space. It's going to have a huge impact. So I would say it's kind of in 2 different places depending on where you are.
And do you think with all the AI hype out there, it's causing companies to overpromise or underdeliver because of the AI that they're saying they have?
So, as an entrepreneur, as we all know, right? I think most of us have high level of integrity. We want to try to do the right thing, but we end up promising to customers not because we're lying, but because we believe we can get there and more than others. And what happens through that journey, we figure out, well, it's a lot harder than we thought. So instead of September this year, it's September next year. Instead of being $100,000, maybe it's $250,000, right? Instead of 5 people, maybe it's 25 people. So, but that's the entrepreneurial side of things, right? So I think there's a natural part of overpromise that whether it's AI or you're starting up a business, we all have done, right? Not intentionally, but because we believe in the cause. We think tomorrow is another day. It'll be a better day than today, right? So that's an intrinsic part to it. But I think there's another part to it, which is the complexity that I was referring to. I think people are coming to understand that, yes, the models are getting better. But if I asked you how much money you have in the bank, I cannot give you an answer with a 95% confidence level. You're not going to be happy, right? Yeah. And so there are things, if I told you, unfortunately, you have some sort of health issues, I have to be sure, right? If I'm recommending certain treatments. So I think the diffusion part of it is going to take longer. So I see people who have built businesses before that are going after either building, new gen with sort of AI first approach. They're approaching it a lot more logical way. They're having a lot more runway, from a funding wise. I think that's telling the stories better because they know that things don't go the way you want. So therefore you have buffer. On the other hand, there's also another big shift, Gabe, is that, Harvard Business Review says most businesses get started by founders in their 40s. But AI is shifting that age group to early 20s, a lot of young entrepreneurs. So I think we're going to see a balance of experienced cautiousness versus, wild enthusiasm, people starting out, dropping out of college or starting something, a lot of money chasing them. So I think we're going to see a mix of both of those, and that will come out in promises. But in general, I think customers are very cautious, which was not necessarily the case because they're going to deploy complex things. At an individual level, I think we're going to see rapid adoption, but we'll also see rapid churn, whether you look at tools like HeyGen or any of these things. But at enterprise level, I think the POC madness has slowed down. They roughly know how they want to approach. So there's a lot more realism, I think, on the enterprise side than on the prosumer, on the consumer side.
For sure. So let's switch gears here and talk about partnerships, right? Partner enablement is a big part of your focus. So what are the most effective strategies right now that you've seen that are really driving adoption and measurable impact through partnerships?
There are 2 or 3 big forces that are playing out. One is these ginormous sort of hyperscaler platforms that are growing, whether it's Microsoft, Azure, or whether you look at Google Cloud or AWS, to some extent Salesforce. In fact, Salesforce was the first one that really, in a business side, created an app-based economy. So those app-based economy has moved into multi-tier selling models, and there's enormous amount of velocity through those models because the hyperscalers putting structures in place for their customers to shift dollars through that ecosystem. So previously, $100,000 to $100,000 deals, which were sold direct, now are still sold direct, but to a great extent influenced by procurement through those marketplaces. So I think that's when it comes to tech, that is a big play. When it comes to the other sector, when it comes to manufacturing, the biggest things there is, deglobalization, reshoring, whether tariff, you look at it one way or the other, it's basically reshoring, nearshoring, friendshoring, all of those, I think, realignment of the manufacturing supply chain that happened, started with COVID, but accelerating. When you look at the service sector, um, you almost have 2 different economies. You have developing countries like East Asia, India, China, Eastern Europe, where you have a younger demographic, which is kind of lack of education or supply of talent is hampering knowledge-based growth because there's not enough skilled worker. On developed economies like ours or Western Europe and even to some extent Japan, Korea, China, where the demographic is older, people are retiring late because they don't have savings, right? So I think their macro plays differently, and that greatly impacts consumption. And when it can impact consumption based on how these three drivers, the delivery of it, which greatly happens through a distributed network or their franchises, right? If you think about, you look at Shark Tank, how many protein-based food products are now in Shark Tank because protein is a case, right? And so those, for them to go through retail, whether they go to specialty store or they end up getting 8 trials in Whole Foods, those are all partnerships, right? So on the consumer side, there's huge distribution that's in place in developed countries that is not there in developing countries. So I think if you're looking at partnership on B2C brands, you approach in a very different way. You start with influencers. You start driving local demands. Then you go to a fulfillment house like a Whole Foods and say, hey, I'm shipping direct. You already have in New York City people buying all this stuff. Here are my metrics. Can you carry it in one store? So how you carry that partnership is fundamentally different than when you go to a hyperscaler on the tech cycle, right? Or you're already selling $150, $200 million deals, but the procurement guy through marketplace is coming to you and said, I need 7% discount because I have this big private offer from Amazon, because if I buy all my vendors through them, I get an extra 7%. It's a pure transact. So I think partnerships, because of the investment that has been made in the tech and manufacturing, and greatly even in the consumer side, both online and offline, we're going to see more and more companies try to rely on that as an infrastructure, but they're also enabler that will go after in a very different way. But so it's definitely here to say those are the three big trends I kind of see.
So when it comes to driving profitable growth, what's your approach to balancing innovation with disciplined execution?
People pay for solving problems, right? And then to solve those problems, you have to find a group of people, as I said in the beginning, that love solving those problems. And then once you solve those problems, you have to have some money left in the bank. So I think that is the job of, and Gabe, you know this very well, is I think the job of the founder is not to get carried away what in his or her head, is to really figure out if that left side balances with the right side and something is left over in the end. So I think in this moment, when I see the companies, there are huge opportunities in AI. So if you're launching single functional product, I think you can get to market leveraging digital, leveraging not just on the front end, but also back end delivery wise. You need very little infrastructure, because if you develop an Azure or if you develop an AWS, you don't need $1 million server farm, right? You literally pay $1,200 a month and you can launch a product and it will scale with you. So literally you're seeing ARR that we have never seen before. 6 people launched a product in 6 months, they're $25 million in revenue. I don't think we haven't seen velocity like this. Even YouTube in its early days, it had subscribers, but it didn't have revenue. If you look at Hotmail, I mean, I'm dating myself, but when that thing they had 400 million subscribers, he's still trying to figure out what my revenue model, and he's running, all these servers out of his apartment in Mountain View. Then Microsoft came and bought him, but they didn't have that revenue model. Now people are starting with revenue. So profitable growth today, I think, is around finding niche problems, because a lot of the horizontal problems are being, solved by these large platform companies. That doesn't mean they're on there. Anthropic is a great example. Like coding is a very horizontal problem, and the way they have increased velocity in hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue level, that is an example. But those are harder to find. But it's easier to find, I think, niche vertical problems where you can build 10, 20, 30, $50 million businesses, but balancing that economics of how much will the customer pay, who do I need, what do I need to solve that, and will I have money in the bank? You have to constantly think about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are right now being distracted because there's a lot of complex systems. You deal with this. Partnership networks, very, very complex. Technology is very complex. But at the core of it, it's about collaborating with people who are building these technologies and managing these partnerships and running these complex systems. But I think the vision gets lost, right? So how do you, what's your recommendation of really connecting all these complex problems with a team of people and keeping that vision forefront for them to show up every day?
So I think you have to think about, you know, are you trying to put a meal together, or you're putting an accessory to the meal together? Like, are you trying to, build a better chicken sandwich against competing against burger, or are you have curly fries that you're going to replace French fries, right?
Right.
And so first, I think we as sort of founders need to understand what part of the wallet share we're trying to actually, go after, and why would the customer even switch from, I don't even know what the market share of curly fries is, but I get really happy when I find them. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go curly fries, but not all of them sell, right? So it can't be mainstream. So I think that you have to very, very, you know, clearly understand. If you're selling, a cheeseburger, possibly you have the most horizontal market, but you also possibly have to compete at $250 to $350 range, right? But if you're selling, some spicy lime tater tots, made in star-shaped thing for kids, I don't know, whatever that segment is, maybe you can charge $850 for it, but you don't sell a lot, right? So understanding that velocity is very, very important. That, what problem am I solving? How many people are gonna buy that? Is it a vitamin or an aspirin, right? Is it the burger or the fries? And then what is my economics, in doing that? Unless you have understanding of that, I think it's very difficult to build something that you can replicate and scale.
I love that. And I'd love to know more how you do team culture as well. So, obviously, in leadership, building your team up, making sure you have a strong culture is so important. How do you build that while making the team high performing, human centered, but also love what they're doing and showing up for you?
So for me, it's one sample data set, and I kind of looked at through one filter, which has worked both at larger Fortune 100 companies and here at Zinfi. I tend to look for people that have worked in a role at least 4 to 5 years, but they have done different things in their careers. So I'm absolutely okay if you're a guitar player for 4 years, but not for 4 months. Then you shifted to coding, and you did that for 6 years. Then you went and became a basketball player, and now you are something else and a marketer, right? Because I think that shows a tenacity in the because you can't figure out a contribution of an employee, because you have to invest first 12 to 18 months, no matter how great they are. Even if they come in at a VP, you're investing in them to really integrate into the company. And then you got to give them at least, in my principle, 3 customer life cycle. So if we're selling into enterprise, that's a year life cycle, because whatever they do, their output is going to show up. First time, it's going to possibly get messed up. Second time, you got to see if they can fix it. And third time, can they make better? So you roughly have to give them a 4 to 5 year window, and they have to demonstrate that they have the tenacity to stay. So that's, one resume pattern I look at. The second one I look at is that, have they done different things? It's one thing to stay in one, because I think that shows creativity and ability to adapt. Because the biggest thing, as you both know, when you start up a company, you have a direction, roughly where north is, but your compass may break through the journey. You have to kind of now use, I don't know, moon and the sun and the star to figure out, what the next stop is before you get another compass, right? So you need people that are going to stay with you in the journey, and they're not just going to quit when it gets hard. Because, speaking of do the hard things, man, it is hard. It is so hard. People don't even understand it, how hard that is, right? So you need employees that are not really employees, that are, and I love this word, missionaries versus mercenaries. You have to really find the missionaries in the early phase. Later on, I think you need mercenaries, especially in sales. You need mercenaries that are coin operated, they're, numbers driven. But in the early stage, when you're figuring out what problem you're solving, do you have the right structure, right people, to get there? Will the economics make sense? You absolutely need missionaries who will stay with you. But the way I have looked for people is that, have you stayed somewhere for 4 years? Have you done different things? That has worked out for me relatively well. And in fact, the other way, every time I deviated from it, we ended up hiring someone that didn't fit.
That's incredible. So in winding down, let's look at the future here, right? So what is exciting you most right now about the future of partner ops, and really where do you see that opportunity, or where do you see those biggest opportunities for value creation?
So I'll start with like what depresses me the most. What depresses me the most that I'm not 22. I wish I could say too, because I think it's just getting started. I think the world would be a better place. I think we'll waste less energy. I think we're gonna have less pollution. I think we're gonna have incredible recycle programs, because there's so many different alloys that's gonna come out that we don't know, because we dig up everything, because we basically, chemistry sucks and it's hard. I think AI is gonna solve foundational materials problem that builds economies and infrastructure. I mean, we're in a building, it's built with materials. We're talking to stuff like this display and the camera and the mic, they're all made of materials, even though it's all digit. But we're a very, very material driven world. And I think material science is so outdated and so slow. So I think we're going to see massive innovation there. I think we're going to see incredible innovation in biology. I mean, we barely know anything about the brain, right? We almost know nothing about the brain. And so I think we're going to see that. If you look at the pharmaceutical pipeline, it is very, very rich. We're afraid of death, not, I think, because of death, but the pain associated with it. I think the way medical science is progressing, and today you go to a financial advisor, right? They tell you to plan for 9,500. For Lexi, possibly they're going to ask you to plan for 130. So, which is incredible, right? But you don't want to have a painful life. So I think on the medical science, unless material science, biology, and medical science, if they don't progress, quality of life will not progress. I think those are foundational. So I think, and I know very little, but we have a lot of customers, in that space, and I see there's incredible excitement. Then I think I love the word that Microsoft came up with, this drudgery of work. Man, I mean, I hate emails, but I have to do emails because otherwise I can't figure out what the hell's going on, right? But OpenAI has an interface now. I don't know whether you've tried. If not, I highly recommend. You go connect your Exchange, you build a bunch of prompts. In the morning, you wake up. I get on an average 600 to 700 emails overnight. And in the morning, I wake up, it's, summarized. I can go click on a link. It takes me to that email. I see, and again, there's a Copilot summary, right? So I think productivity wise, especially, if you're trying to build something, there's so much information coming at you, and you have only so much time, right? So you have to pick and choose. I think that will become a lot more exciting. And then I think we'll see complete reinvention of software. I think every software is going to get rewritten, every bit of code that's out there. It may take 30 years. It may take, 10 years. I don't know what that time frame is. Somewhere between 10 to 30. I think the entire stack will get overwritten. I think how you work will completely change. Yeah, so that's why I get depressed every morning that I'm not 22. So
Oh, you've been incredible, and just hearing that is so awesome and inspiring, and I'm really excited that a lot of cool things going to be happening. Who's the best person that should get a hold of you, your company, and where should they do so?
you mean from if customers are looking for solutions that we provide?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say go, to our website. We have a lot of information there. Fill in. They can absolutely reach out to our head of sales, Melissa McNeil. She's also on LinkedIn. She posts quite a bit. I'm also available. I talk to customers all day long. So yeah, they can totally do that. But the website is zinfi.com, zinfi.com. And I don't know whether Gabe, you asked me or somebody else asked me. It's a mathematical symbol. It stands for 0 to infinity. But it's also short form of Zinfandel. So it's a blend of art and science. That's the way you kind of look at it, what we're trying to solve. But they can go to zinfi.com and fill out a form, and they can reach out to us.
Sugata, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Such an impactful show. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast. Thank you.